So I know you might be familiar with your local representative, whether it's Martin, Claudio, Mohammed, or Hugo, but you're most welcome. So my name is Sami Luvinzo, working for Data Group IT. I'm the specialist on application security. So I'll allow my colleague, who's my counterpart, who covers this region, to introduce what we do at Data Group IT, and then we'll proceed with the discussion on application security. So I believe it's going to be helpful to you. So I'm looking forward to feedback after the webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Felix.
Thank you very much, Sami. I hope I'm loud and clear.
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Thank you. Thank you for that confirmation. Thank you once again, everybody, for joining this webinar. My name is Felix Tali. I'm based out of Zambia, and I'm the pre-sales engineer, as Sami mentioned. I just want to speak to what we do at Data Group IT. Just a bit of introduction. We're a cybersecurity-based distributor company, and we have what's displayed here as a summary of what we do. And we in-house call this the 6-pillar model. We call it the reference architecture. This is something that was designed in-house, just to cover all aspects of cybersecurity. As we all know, cybersecurity is like a wide range. It's a spectrum. It's a spectrum of different layers, which need to be secured. So having had much experience in cybersecurity, having looked at many use cases around and interacted with different professionals and experts, and also in comparison with different environments, different sectors, this is what we came up with as sort of a guide, a sort of a model by which we position our solutions that cater to the use cases, the pain points that we're seeing in each of the customer environments and business. So I would like to speak to this. So this is the 6-pillar model, as I mentioned. And in this, you see that we've got 6 pillars speaking to data security, network security, application security, user security, cloud security, and mobile security. And I think we'll all agree to say that these speak to the various aspects that affect our businesses in terms of cybersecurity. So like when you look at the first pillar, data security, for instance, and in here, we're not talking about any logos, we're not talking about any vendors, we're just talking about cybersecurity as a whole, okay? We're just talking about, the segment that need to be secured. So when you look at data security, you find things like your SIEM solutions under there. You see things like data backup and disaster recovery. That speaks to data protection. We're talking about data security, okay? Database activity monitoring and the likes, speaking to data security. And we're talking about all things to do with data protection, right? And we'll find that we have solutions that cater to this segment. Also, when we talk about network security, we're talking about things like your NAC solution, network access control. We're talking about, your network detection and response, okay, your NDR solutions, talking about anything like traditional, firewall solutions. Okay, this falls under this category. Your file integrity monitoring, your DDoS protection against, your websites, your web applications, or anything on network DDoS, which Sami will speak to at length today. So it's under this segment that we, also categorize solutions that, cover this segment. And then also when you look at application security, obviously almost every business has a web application website, web applications. We are talking about, API communication there with this digital transformation. So you find that around this segment, this speaks to everything application security, right? Your application, your what we call WAF solution, web application firewall, API security, the DLP solutions. This is a segment that speaks to such. Also, user security. privileged access management, identity and access management, and governance. Okay, and these also come as a way of compliance in most cases. But also there's security use cases to this, because you want to identify who has access to your organizational resources, who has privileged access to privileged and sensitive resources. So this is the segment that speaks to that. Your EDR solution, protection of endpoints, right? This is the segment that speaks to that. So as DGIT, we've categorized these and we've placed solutions, turnkey and cutting edge technology that speaks to protection with regards to each of these pillars. All right. Of course, today we're going to take a deep dive. Sami will take a deep dive in application security and DDoS protection. But this is just speaking to every aspect of cybersecurity. Also, cloud. Okay. Digital transformation. Right. Mostly we are seeing a shift to the cloud. We're seeing the use of SaaS applications now, you know, just the cloud, just making life very easy for most businesses. But, with the move to the cloud, just means that, just brings about the need for more security, because you've opened up, the attack surface. And therefore, it's just right that there's a proper security posture that is put even as far as cloud is concerned. So also the other aspect is mobile security. And mobile security, we are talking about endpoint, unified endpoint management. We're talking about BYOD, allowing BYOD devices to be used for company purposes. How do we secure those? All right. How do we make sure that security is extended to non-Windows, non-Linux gadgets, for instance, like the iOS devices, the Android devices? How do we extend that level of security to such devices, which you are using for corporate reasons, to access corporate resources, to access business resources, and from any environment, not just within the environment, but even outside there. So how do we ensure that there's security for that? So in a nutshell, this is what Data Group IT does. Looking at this, what we call the six pillar model, and I'm sure we'll agree. And we've seen this, a lot of our customers have adopted this as their framework as well, to just check, to make sure that they're in check with the and they have a positive security posture in their business and environment. So this just summarizes sort of what we do as DGIT. These are the solutions. All we do is cybersecurity, and we distribute solutions and turnkey technology that utilizes AI and machine learning and many other sophisticated technology to be able to combat threat actors as far as uh, uh, you know um, attacks with regards to any of the six pillars that we've highlighted here. So this is a summary of DGIT. And with this, I would like to hand over to Sami. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Felix, for that introduction. So the reason why we like introducing ourselves that way is because we know that you might be at different stages in your IT maturity, and you might find that there are solutions that you're interested in that are not necessarily in this current webinar. So the reason why we also put the names of the local team members at the beginning is just remind you that you can reach out to your local account manager if you have any concern in any of the areas that my colleague Felix mentioned. Also, Felix is the one who will attend to you in terms of technical when it comes to these discussions. So going to today's discussion on application security, we're going to look at it in terms of the trends that we are seeing in terms of application security. And then we'll discuss how we believe you can better secure your applications. So I know I like having interactive sessions, but I know it's a webinar, so we can't have that bit. But please feel free to ask questions. We can put them on the chat, or you can ask them after, so that we can set up maybe a follow-up session with your team if there's something in this discussion that you find particularly relevant. So generally applications have evolved over time. We see that modern applications are quite different from how the older or traditional applications used to be. So when I started my career, we used to do a lot of applications were quote unquote simple in terms of setup. So sorry about the busy slide. If you're not technical, don't worry too much about whatever content is here. I just want you to explain how it moves from something simple to more complicated. So one of the things that we had before is mostly what you call monolithic systems. So basically, we just had one big server that handles the front end operations, maybe a backend server and a database. So it was quite straightforward in terms of how it worked. But now moving forward, people felt they need maybe more reliability, because if you have one big service, if it fails, the whole application fails. But if you're able to split the service into smaller services, then it becomes easier to maintain availability and stability, and the app is much easier to scale. So things like scalability requirements as well as reliability are what have driven the applications becoming more complex. So the things that are relevant for discussion today is number one, the use of APIs more. Because you see, in the modern applications, that's where they use microservices and serverless deployment. You have API gateways being used. So these API gateways basically give an interface between different parts of the application. So that's just on web-based applications. But if you move further into mobile applications, which are not on this slide, they now sit on the user's device, user's mobile phone, and then they connect to the backend through the internet, again through APIs. So this has made it more challenging to protect applications, but also creates opportunities for you to grow as an organization. So one of the things that we've noted in terms of trends is that applications are becoming the primary revenue generator in organizations. So where you are, even if it's not yet there, but you can see that trend heading there. So I think this is most clear when it comes to banking customers or banking players. You find that before, most people used to walk to the bank to do their transactions, to be able to do whatever they want to do in terms of transactions, withdrawing money, saving money, all that. They used to do it at a branch. But now we have agents, we have online banking, we have mobile apps that can do most of the things that a bank would need to be done. The same thing applies to governments. We find that governments are becoming more reliant on digital systems. So they want to do IDs, they want to do driving licenses, all these things, they want to do them online, on online systems. So it's become business critical to have these services up and running. That brings a first challenge. These services have become critical. You need them to be running perpetually. You cannot afford them to be off, because every second the system is up means revenue for the organization. So even where you are right now, the systems that you have online are critical for your business. So what happens if they become unavailable, even for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, becomes a big issue, to the point where if your system goes down for a long time and you can't explain why it went down, or you can't show that you did everything you could do to prevent that situation, that there goes your job, because the business cannot afford to lose so much revenue because of maybe not taking the right measures. So the other thing that we see that makes this situation a bit more complicated is the fact that when it comes to the attacks against availability, which we call the denial of service, or maybe distributed denial of service, because nowadays they don't just do it from one point, they do it from multiple locations. So we call it distributed denial of service, or DDoS. So the trends have, as you can see from just this sample between 2021 and 2022, you notice that the trend has grown drastically. And this is from Empower's Global DDoS Threat Landscape report that was released last year. So you can see we're trending upwards in terms of number of incidents of DDoS attacks. So it means if you don't have an effective tool against DDoS attacks, it's just a matter of time before you're hit. Yeah, and when you're hit, you don't know how serious the hit will be. Maybe you'll be unavailable for 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Maybe it's a whole hour. Maybe it's a whole day, depending on the kind of actors and how much they want you to be down, how much they benefit from you being down. So they have their different motivations in terms of the DDoS attacks. But the point today is that the attacks are increasing in frequency, and it's impossible to ignore the issue. And going forward, it's just going to keep increasing and increasing. The other thing we noted in terms of trends is that it's not only increasing in frequency, but also in intensity. So that brings a second challenge. They're not just becoming more frequent in terms of the number of incidents, they're becoming more intense in terms of packets per second. So it means if you don't have a tool that can handle a very intense DDoS attack, it becomes difficult to keep your applications up and running. So there's that increase in frequency of DDoS attacks. And also there's the issue of increase in intensity and also complexity of these attacks. So that creates a big challenge in terms of uptime of a business critical applications. So that's a problem that we'd like you to appreciate and understand. And later we'll explain how we believe you can be able to mitigate this challenge. The other trend we are seeing in terms of applications is the one for API use. So I mentioned this in the initial slides, but what you're seeing is two things, in my opinion, that are driving a lot of this API use. One of them is what you call single page web applications. So sorry if it sounds a bit technical, but basically before, a website used to have multiple pages that are loaded separately. If you go from home and you want to go to maybe the about page, you want to go to the whichever page you have on the website, it loads a different page. So you go from one page to another page to another page. Now the problem with that approach is that it's quite inefficient, because every time you have to load a new page, a new page, a new page. Why can't you just have one page loaded and then you just modify the content inside that page? So people found that to be much more efficient in terms of operation of these web applications. So now the way they accomplish this single page web application is that they have a front end which has several scripts, and then that front end web page connects to the backend part of the system using APIs. So it just makes numerous API calls to other parts of the system to be able to run the website. So that means on one website, you could have maybe hundreds or thousands of API calls being done just on one web page. The other issue is the other trend is the mobile app proliferation. So I think it's something that we can all attest to, that every company wants a mobile app. If you don't have a mobile app, it's very difficult to sell your products in the current market that we have. So every organization is rushing to have a mobile app for every service that they can. Even governments want to have mobile apps to make their processes much easier. Now, both the mobile app and the single page web applications use a lot of APIs. So you might not be aware of how much APIs you're using, but you'll be surprised to find that you're using much more APIs than what you thought. So if you're running a mobile app, that's connecting to your backend system through APIs. If you're running any sort of website, there's a high probability that those websites are driven by APIs, which makes it more challenging to protect. So you can see just from this report, an extract from Empower's Badbot report, you see that the annual revenue derived from APIs keeps increasing. So it's not just a negative part that they're becoming more, it's actually very positive. So you find more and more organizations are making more money from APIs, because APIs are becoming critical to their business. So they're not only becoming more, but we're actually generating more revenue. So it's a good thing that they're becoming more. But then the question is, how do I make sure that I have security for these APIs? So there are things related to what kind of data this API is transacting, because you don't just see APIs in real, like literally, because most of the time it's a piece of code inside the application that's being connected to. It's a port that's open on the server. So it's very difficult for you to say, I have this many APIs, and this is the data that they're transacting. The other trend that makes it worse is that a lot of systems that we use libraries that are maybe open source or general purpose. So these libraries are basically pieces of code that are loaded as part of your web application. So you can imagine a web application is one box, and then while it loads, it picks other boxes from other parts of the internet. Now, those other quote unquote boxes are what you call, they're included inside the application. Now, those APIs that are used, those libraries that are used from outside might have a lot of API functions. So you can imagine, maybe I'm running a website, I need to do a login function. I pick a library that does login function to user authentication. And on that function, maybe there are 20 different API calls I can use on that application. But because my application is simpler, I'm only using 9 of them. Now, the other 11, I'm not using. I don't need it for my application. But I might forget to disable those functions, those 11 functions that are not being used by my application. So it means if someone knows you're using that library, and maybe function number 15 and 16 are vulnerable, but you forgot to disable them, you don't even know that they're being used on your application. So they can just go to those functions and get access to your backend systems. So the API use creates a challenge of lack of visibility into what the APIs are doing, what data they're transacting. Then number two, those APIs can be abused as they are, because there's what they're supposed to do, and people can push them to do what they're not supposed to do. Basically, they can give more data than they should. They could give access to your backend systems, which could end up with a data breach through your APIs. And you don't want to sit before the board and tell them, I didn't know about the APIs. That's not something you want to do. You want to know about your APIs. You want to be protecting those APIs with the best tools that are available, so that you're on top of securing your business, so that security doesn't become a bottleneck, but becomes an enabler for the business to progress. So I'd say these are very big trends that you've seen. The third trend that we've seen is in the area of bots. So bots are basically automated systems that simulate like human beings on connecting to a website or web application. So there's been an increase in automation and use of AI, which has resulted in more bot attacks that are increasingly sophisticated. So what you're seeing in terms of the numbers, again, this is extracted from Impava's bad bot report for this year, which of course we can share with you at the end of this webinar. So it's a long report and explains exactly what is being seen in terms of trends on bot attacks. And the other report that you can share is the one for DDoS attacks, which also gives you more visibility into how the attacks the trend is going. There's also another one for API, which we can share, of course. So in terms of bad bots, the percentage of bots that are connecting to your application. So remember, a bot is an automated system that looks like a human being. It tries to simulate a real client, a real human being connecting to your website. So it means if you're using the website data to try to predict, I have a store, and see how many people visit my site. I want to analyze how many people log in and don't buy, how many people log in, how many people add things to the cart. You want to use those trends or those that data to make business decisions. They're going to be poor because a lot of that is being done by bots. So what the report found is that 32% of traffic is actually from bad bots. Like of all the bots, 32% is bad bots. So of all the traffic hitting a website, on average, a third of it is actual malicious bot traffic. So it's a very big number that you cannot afford to ignore. So the rest of the bots are actually good bots. So things like web crawlers that help to index your page for Google searches or Bing searches, whichever it is, and other bots that help to promote your website. So those account for about 18% of the traffic coming to your website. But now the important thing is, how do you differentiate these bots that you need for your website to be effective and the bad bots that will cause your systems to be attacked, to go down, for data to be leaked, for all those things to happen that you don't want from your application. So that becomes a big challenge. So still about half of your traffic is human being traffic, which is still good. But you're seeing a trend upwards of the number of bad bots and other bots, and the trend downwards in terms of the real human visits on your website. So it means if you're in a situation where you're paying resource for cloud resources on your application, you're wasting resources attending to bad bots. So you can imagine if you just remove 30% of traffic coming to your website, you're going to save 30% on infrastructure costs. So that's not something that, again, you can ignore. It's going to be a big saving for the business if you can just remove the bad bots from your traffic. The other trend we are seeing in regarding bots is now sophistication. So they're not just becoming more, they're becoming harder to detect and block. So before it was easy to set up a signature-based tool to just identify bot connections, maybe using the user agent, but it's becoming harder and harder to do it. So you can see as of last year, we look at the trends for this year, maybe at the end of the year, we found that 60% of the bots are actually evasive. So that's something very worrying. So 60.5% of bad bots are actually evasive. So out of those evasive, 48% actually advanced in terms of the evasion techniques, and 12.4 use moderate techniques. So it means most of these bad bots use advanced techniques to evade detection. So it means if you don't have any protection, it's very easy for these bots to get in and connect to your application and do malicious damage to it because they are very complicated to be able to detect. So those are the two trends that I'd say you don't have to think about. The bots are becoming more, they're becoming more sophisticated. So it means you need sophisticated tools to be able to effectively identify, even before you block, just to identify that this is a bot, not a human being, because you don't want to prevent the human beings from accessing a website, which will be lost business for you. That's something, again, to keep in mind when it comes to security. The other thing that we've noted is that in terms of categories, this is just an analysis to see what kind of automated attacks are coming through. So most of them can be identified with WASP attacks. So they use the kind of attacks that are typical for attacking applications. What is under OWASP classification, application attacks. So they're able to use that to attack your application, but still, these same bots are also involved in DDoS attacks. So you find that some of them are still being used to perpetuate DDoS attacks on your application. On the other hand, you also find that a number of them use what you call OWASP automated attacks. So there are those attacks that are driven by bots that are used to attack applications. So they're automated attacks. So if you just Google on OWASP automated attacks, you will see a list of common attacks that are coming in as automated attacks. And if you again search for OWASP for WAF and API, again, you'll see all those kinds of attacks. So they're distributed in terms of the type of attacks. And you can see more details on our bad bot reports for 2024. This report is also available on the internet. So if you just Google Empower bad bot reports, you'll see the link, and then you'll be able to download for free from Empower. So just in summary, we can recap the different attacks and risks that we have. So I've given you a bit of picture of the trends. So let's just bring it together in terms of what the attacks we are seeing on the applications. So we talked about DDoS attacks. So DDoS is, just to remind you, is distributed denial of service, DDoS. So DDoS attacks are becoming more sophisticated and becoming more frequent. So you can see there are very many types of DDoS attacks. So you need a tool that can effectively identify all the types of attacks, not just identify, but be able to block them effectively without affecting real users. So you don't want your site to become unavailable to real users at the expense of trying to do the best security. Because you remember, we looked at the trend of applications becoming more critical to the business. So you want a DDoS mitigation tool that is going to be very accurate to block the bad traffic and allow the good traffic. So you want a tool that can prevent both network-based DDoS attacks and application-based DDoS attacks. So maybe to just break it down a bit. So network-based means that what you call layer 3, 4. So there are many types of network DDoS attacks. So they are not at the application level, meaning they're not like transacting at HTTP level, but at the packet level where the packet hits your backend servers. So there are many attacks that can actually use that angle to get to you. The other one is the area of layer 7 DDoS. So this is something that maybe competitors might not cover effectively, where they might cover layer 3, 4, but then ignore application DDoS attacks. So many of these more complicated DDoS attacks are actually application-based DDoS attacks. So it would be important to have a solution that covers both network-based attacks and layer 7, that means application DDoS attacks. So that's on the area of DDoS. Now, the other things that we discussed now directly on the application, the reason why I didn't mention the trends on WAF is because there's been a lot of push on WAF. So sometimes we maybe forget there are other areas that are actually growing in terms of application risk. But the hello, sorry about that. There was a network issue. Can you still see my screen, Diane?
Yes, we can.
Oh, sorry, apologies. Yeah, so I was saying when it comes to web security, it's still important to have the WAF. So web application firewall is what is on, they can see my pointer. Let me just use, so you can see under OWASP top 10. So that's where the WAF comes in. So you want to prevent hacking against your website. So that trend is still going up. It's just that the other areas have become of more focus. Yeah. But in terms of application security, you still need a WAF that is very accurate, web application firewall. So you still have the injections, the sensitive data exposure, the cross-site scripting, and so on. So all these OWASP top 10 attacks, you still need a WAF that can effectively block those attacks. So you want a WAF that is accurate. That means that it won't allow bad traffic, but it won't block good traffic, which is very important. Because even if you block bad traffic and end up blocking legitimate traffic, you can end up losing more money than you'd have lost in an attack if you end up blocking legitimate users. So that's why it's important to still have the WAF capabilities to prevent OWASP top 10 attacks. But now going beyond that, you remember that the bots also have OWASP automated attacks. So you also need a solution that goes beyond just the WAF, but looks at automated threats, the ones coming from bots. How do you identify bots and prevent the activity? So they do more complicated attacks like account aggregation. They try to steal user passwords, password cracking. They try to do scalping, where they steal credit card information. They try to do vulnerability scanning. They try to do capture defeats. They do card cracking, where they put in different cards just to see which one will work. So there are many things they do in terms of automated threats, the bot related threats that you need to be able to prevent. So all these are coming from the bots that you've seen that are growing more and becoming more complicated. On the other hand, on the APIs, remember the APIs are becoming more prevalent, they're becoming used more. Companies are making more money from these APIs. So for these APIs, you need to be able to take care of their vulnerabilities or how they can be taken advantage of. So things like broken object level authorization, where someone is supposed to access a certain path on the API, but they go beyond that which they're supposed to access. And because the API hasn't put some guardrails that are effective, it ends up giving more information than they should to the attacker. So there are many vulnerabilities and issues around API security. As you can see here, even things to do with injection, excessive data exposure. But basically, when APIs are abused, the most common scenario is that they end up giving more data than they should. They end up in a situation of either data exfiltration or just data exposure on the APIs, so that it becomes a security issue of data being exposed. Beyond that, they can also cause the application to fail. So remember that the applications are very dependent on APIs. So it can cause it to fail, which again is a big problem. Those are the three big areas. But beyond that, there are also other things that you may want to look at. One of them is client-side attacks. So these are not that the client is malicious, but what happens is that in modern applications, a lot of functions are loaded from third parties. A good example is ads. So we might open a website, and on that website there's a Google ad. So that ad doesn't come from the company, it comes from Google. So while that ad is loading, if an attacker added malicious scripts so that it loads instead of the ad, so that yes, you're expecting to see the ad, but suddenly there's this malicious code that has been loaded on the user's browser. Now that code can now be used to attack your backend because it's been added, it's executing on the user side. The user has an active session connected to you, and now they can now use that to try get information. They could check their credit card information. They could be able to hijack their form so that they're able to get the information that's on that form. So they can do malicious attacks coming from the client side, but because they made use of malicious code that was loaded externally. So that again can create a big challenge. The other area that can create a big challenge is the area of zero-day attacks. So zero-day attacks by definition are attacks that you are not completely not aware of. So they come on a certain day and time that you did not expect, and now suddenly you need to be able to prevent that attack. So that makes it complicated to prevent. So Empower actually has a solution in this area, which we'll talk about. But basically, the challenge for zero-day attacks is that you want to be able to prevent these attacks before there's an actual fix for those attacks, before you even understand the methodology used to send the attack. So I'll explain how that can take place. So the solution that we are discussing today is from a company called Empower, and they're able to cover all these areas that we've pointed out to you as critical areas in application security. Under DDoS attacks, Empower has a DDoS protection tool that's a leading tool. It's a globally leading tool, and it's been you see that it's been analyzed by third parties and shown to be very effective. And it's something that can also trial. You can trial the system, the software, and just see how it works for you. So it's able to prevent attacks in an SLA of 3 seconds. So that means in 3 seconds, Empower will prevent DDoS attacks against a website, and we'll be able to prevent the attacks in those 3 seconds and not affect the normal business. Another element that comes in when it comes to DDoS attacks is DNS protection. So your DNS servers can also be attacked to bring down your infrastructure. So Empower has a DNS protection capability. So basically, it receives the DNS calls on behalf of your DNS server. It's able to filter out malicious calls from reaching your backend DNS servers so that your DNS service remains up and running. Then a complementary tool to this security components is the CDN. So the CDN is able to improve performance of applications that are running on your infrastructure. So it keeps a copy of the traffic so that it's able to be served more quickly to your clients. Now, on the application side, so the initial part, we're looking at availability. Now, in terms of securing the application, we have the web application firewall, so which is Empower's tool for preventing web application attacks. So this, again, is a very accurate tool. It can either be set up on the cloud or on premise. So you don't need to have it on the cloud. You can also have it as an on-prem appliance, which could either be virtual or physical. So on the WAF, it's a leading WAF solution. It's been a Gartner leader for the last 9 years in a row. So you can imagine that's a very strong product. and it can be deployed either as a cloud service or as an on-prem appliance, which is either physical or virtual. Now, a complementary tool to that is the API security tool. On API security, now we're focusing on securing these APIs that are now part of the web application. So again, this can be offered as a cloud service from Empower's Cloud WAF or Cloud Application Security, or it can be deployed on-premise as a software solution. So it depends on which one fits your requirements better, and you'll be able to see and advise accordingly. The other tool we have is advanced bot protection. So the reason we call it advanced is because you saw in the trends that bots are becoming more advanced and they're becoming more evasive. So with Empower's advanced bot protection, we can be able to identify these advanced and evasive bots and prevent them from coming to the backend, prevent them from attacking your application. So that's Empower's advanced bot protection. Then in terms of client-side attacks, where malicious script can be executed from the client side, Empower has client-side protection that's part of Empower's Cloud WAF service. Now, on the area of zero-day attacks, so the reason why zero-day attacks are quite common is because we make use of a lot of third-party libraries, as I mentioned earlier. And now, those sources, especially open source sources, may not be maintained as well as we expected them to, or as we had them being done before. So you might find you're using a library, an open source library in your application. Now, the current maybe team supporting that open source library maybe gets demotivated, or they get other assignments that become quite involving. Then they stop maintaining that particular library. But remember, your application is still calling that library every time. So if that library, someone finds a vulnerability in the library, it's not being maintained properly, so it's still in your application because that library basically exists inside your application. So when it falls out of proper maintenance, it becomes a big issue. The other thing could be malicious people might actually inject code in an open source project. So there could be an open source project, someone maliciously becomes a member of that team. They start adding code that is good, so they gain trust of the team, and eventually they're able to push bad code alongside their good code into that library. And again, your application calls this library and includes it. So that makes it necessary to have what you call runtime protection from Empower, which is able to identify attacks against an application that can't be prevented using known protection techniques. So it's embedded in the application, either in the code or in the runtime. It's able to prevent attacks against the application. So this can work on premise and also work on the cloud if you're on the cloud. So this is a summary of the solution from Empower. So I'll show you a brief demo and then we'll recap. Diane, are there any questions in the chat before I continue? Claudio? A moment, I will share my screen.
I don't see anything in the chat so far, Sammy.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that confirmation. Let me share the screen.
Sammy, maybe there was that one. I don't know if you saw this. Can you elaborate how Imperva protects shadow APIs? I don't know if you covered this one.
Okay. All right, thanks for that. So when it comes to shadow APIs, they're basically the APIs that you're not aware of. So there are two things here. One is awareness, and number two is protection. So the first challenge is that shadow APIs are not known to you. So they exist within your applications, and you are not aware that they exist. The application is making 100 calls to APIs, but you don't even know that it's making those calls. The application has 100 APIs listening, and you don't even know what that is listening to those APIs. So the first thing that Empower helps you with is being able to identify those shadow APIs. It's able to analyze your traffic, and in real time, it's able to point out to you that this is the application that is running. These are the APIs that are inside that application. And then now you become aware. Now, the second thing it can do is I can start monitoring the transactions on those APIs and start telling you where the sensitive data is, where the sensitive data is being transacted. So it's able to check and tell you there's PCI data on these particular calls. It won't expose the data, like tell you, okay, we've seen this particular credit card number. But what it will do is that it will show you these are the calls that we've seen, and this is a kind of data that is being transacted. So it won't tell you this is the actual data, this is a kind of data. Now you'll be aware of which APIs you have and which kind of sensitive data they're transacting. Now, the third step is that now we can now start protecting those APIs. They're no longer shadow APIs, they're now known to us. Now we can prevent attacks on those APIs. So thanks for the question. So this is one of the solutions that we have. So it's a web-based, it's a cloud-based option for application security, but you still have an on-prem version. See if it's online. We still have an on-prem option, so it's not running, but we have an on-prem option that is maybe just takes a different approach. It just takes a different approach in terms of application security, but you can still get similar capabilities to the online-based one. So I'll take you through the online system because of time. But if you're interested in either API security, bot protection, or just WAF, please reach out to us. We have an on-prem as well as cloud-based solutions. So please feel free to reach out to us. So this is the dashboard for Cloud WAF. So you can see here the websites that are onboarded. Now, Cloud WAF uses DNS to redirect your website. So it's something that can take a few minutes to redirect and be able to onboard. So onboarding on Cloud WAF, it's very quick, it's very easy. And in fact, if you're currently experiencing an attack, we can onboard you on an emergency basis so that we move your traffic to go through the Power Cloud WAF and then protect you. And then we have discussions later. So that's something that we can do. The onboarding is very easy. So here you can see the WAF information. So you can see the violations on the WAF module. So we have all the modules in one particular dashboard. So you get the WAF, you get bot protection, you get DDoS protection on the same dashboard. So that's the power of this platform. It's one unified platform that gives you all the capabilities you need. So you can see WAF, we have 176 sessions. You can see 477 events have been blocked. You can see there are bot attacks also that have been seen. The advanced bot protection has prevented 205 bot attacks. So you can see this just happens in the background without needing your input. It just does it for you. And then it also has a feature for account takeover prevention, which I won't go into right now in detail, but basically it prevents a login page from being attacked with stolen credentials. So if it sees login behavior of someone trying to use stolen credentials, it will be able to block that activity. So it's an account takeover prevention capability. So again, if you're interested in this, reach out to us. The other one is client classification, which just is a basic version of advanced bot protection, which again works in the background to protect your applications. So here we don't have a DDoS attack in the last 7 days. Let me just extend it. So you can be able to see, okay, here we have 3 large DDoS attacks that were prevented in the last 90 days. So again, it has the DDoS prevention capability on the same dashboard. Now, the best thing about this platform is that it takes all the information from the WAF, from the bot protection, from the DDoS protection, and puts it in one dashboard so that you're able to see an analysis of your attacks, or what you call attack analytics. So you're able to see, okay, these are the issues that we've seen. These are the most critical. So you can see most critical are 28. These are the major incidents, and these are minor. So if you have just a few minutes to analyze what's happening, you can easily come to attack analytics and just see a summary of what has been happening in your application. You can see the trends, you can see the top violations, you can see the attack tools being used on your websites, You can see which are the most attacked websites. And it just highlights maybe issues on your network. You can see 655 similar incidents were identified across the customer base. So it's just a way for you to understand, and you can always drill down if you wish, but you can also stay at the high level. So if you drill down, you get more details of the attack. The important thing is that they're being blocked. So you can see 97%, 95%, 100% blocked. So it's working automatically to block the attacks without requiring input from you, and it's completely transparent. You can get more details of the attacking IP. So here we tell you it's in the US, and you can even see the rating of that IP in terms of like what they've been doing before that particular IP. You can see what behavior they've had before attacking you. So it's a very comprehensive tool. Let me just show you the application dashboard quickly. So you can see we have WAF, we have API security, we have advanced bot protection, we have the client-side protection we talked about, and you also have runtime protection. And there are also some SSL tools, which we'll look at today. And then now Attack Analytics just puts everything together in one place. Let me show you quickly the API security, and then we go back to our slides. So on API security, as I told you, the first thing we do is discovery. So we discover all the APIs that are here, that are on your application. So on Cloud WAF, it will be able to identify these are the APIs on this particular website that is onboarded. So it does it automatically without you having to maybe upload a Swagger file or define them manually. So you can see it's automatically discovering them. It's also identifying the endpoints and the kind of functions that they have and how many calls they are making. It's also identifying risks within the API. So you can see the method it has, the risk that it has, on those APIs. You can see this is an excessive data exposure risk and so on. So there are many types of risks. It can also be able to tell you what kind of data is being transacted. So if there's PCI data, it will be able to tell you if there's PCI data being transacted. It would list here under data label. It will be able to show you. So, and then also if there are vulnerabilities, it would show you, and then the trends of traffic. So you can be able to put policies to protect those APIs, to block alerts, block requests and so on. So you can fine tune the policies according to your requirements. So I'll just conclude because of time, and then let's go back to so let me just share go back to the PowerPoint. So thanks so much. In conclusion, I think you've seen on the demo, it's a one dashboard that can have all these capabilities from WAF to basic API security, advanced bot protection, client-side protection, and even the zero-day protection, the runtime protection. It's in one dashboard together with DDoS protection and the CDN capability. Empower is a company that has been in use with solutions that have been used by all the largest organizations globally. You can see 4 of the 5 largest banks, 3 of the 5 largest insurers globally, and 34% of the Fortune 100. So you can see it has a lot of impact in terms of business for different organizations, from cost saving from attacks to improvement of performance of different parts of the business, and also just response time and user experience is just getting higher. So we'd be very happy to just talk more about this. You can see we have Gartner leadership, Forrester leadership, Coping Core leadership, and so on. So it's a very well established solution that works well to secure your applications wherever they're seated. Remember, it works online, so it works on cloud, it works on-prem, and it's able to effectively secure your applications. So we compress everything into one session, but if you're interested in any of these areas, please reach out to the team. We'll be sending some emails after this. Please feel free to reach out. We'll be very happy to schedule follow-up sessions just to dive deep into whichever areas that you have. The other thing to mention is that we can set up trials on these solutions based on your requirements. So if you need a trial to be able to make a decision on this, we also avail it for you. You can do it on the cloud. It's very quick to set up and be able to get a tool that actually works. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening attentively. And I'll just conclude at that point and hand it over to Diane, who organized this event.
Thank you everyone for joining. There will be a mailer sent out after this with the recording of the session. And then we will have all the contact details of your various account managers for your specific country. Thank you.
Thank you and have a nice rest of the day.